Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You have tuned into the Rebel News live stream on this, a Friday, May 16th, 2025. I'm David Menzies, and my co-host, well, let me tell you a bit about my co-host, shall I? Folks, do you know that today is National Honor Our LGBT Elders Day? And when I told my co-host about this, she said, gracious, we're already into the month of June. And I said, oh, no. What began as Pride Day, Pride Week, Pride Month, Pride Season is now officially Pride Year. She is the she-devil with a sword. She is the Khaleesi of Northern Alberta. She is the sensational Sheila Gunn Reid. Hey, Sheila, how are you going to celebrate National Honor Our LGBT Elders Day?
It's also, mind you, National Bike to Work Day, which now we have an environment minister who apparently alleges that she was on the road in her high heels on her bike with Chrystia Freeland, Julie DeBruson. So it's also National Sea Monkey Day, which are just, I think, brine shrimp. Is that what they are? Whoever invented sea monkeys, what a wonderful scam that was.
Oh, I know, growing up with comic books. What's that phrase, Sheila? Not exactly as advertised, because you'd see this family of sea monkeys.
They had crowns.
Yeah, that's right. And and I take it what you got. I never bought any of that stuff, but what you received. Well, yeah. What exactly? What kind of organism is it exactly?
I think they were brine shrimp. I did buy some for my son from like one of those kitschy stores when he was a little guy. And I remember telling him, don't get your hopes up. There are going to be no crowns, no scepters, no robes, not even monkeys. These are something entirely different. And they did live for a little bit. And then since they were, well, like, I don't know, ocean parasites, nobody cared about them after a while.
Going back to the 70s, all I can remember buying, and it wasn't due to a comic book, it was a TV ad. It was the K-Tel Pocket Fisherman. And boy, I really learned a lesson, Sheila, what looks so good and functional on TV in reality. And of course, the next year we moved to Newfoundland, and here I am with my Pocket Fisherman. It was another reason for me to get a beating by real fisher folk.
I just literally Googled what became of K-Tel, because I'm like, they were there one day and then they just weren't.
Yep.
And they were like the driving force on infomercials. Now you just have the infomercials stuffed in front of your YouTube ad, or your favorite YouTuber just reads them. So infomercials don't really exist anymore. But they continue to operate by primarily licensing their vast music catalog.
Oh, yes.
For TV, film, and commercials. So they make money just on, I guess, royalties.
Yeah, Sheila, that was a bonanza for them. K-Tel was a pioneer back in the early 70s of putting together greatest hits albums, the original hit from the original artist, which, believe it or not, the studios, the recording studios that owned all that material never thought of doing at the time until K-Tel did. I guess they thought there was no market for it, and they made a killing. So maybe it lives on.
Can I tell you that the founder of K-Tel is from Saskatchewan? He's dead now. But Philip Kives died in 2016. He was from, oh God, how do you say that? That's a lot of vowels. Ongre? I'm sure it's a lot of, it'll probably be pronounced differently than what I said, Saskatchewan. Anyway, 60 kilometers west of Estevan. So anyways, thank you for coming on this journey with me as I recall the 80s. We should tell everybody what we're doing. I've got a heart out today because I've got an interview with UCP MLA after this. So if you are watching us on the great free speech platform of Rumble. There are a couple of different ways that you can support our work there. First, it costs you nothing. Share the stream with somebody you think needs to see it. The second way is by leaving us a Rumble rant. That's their paid chat. And if it's over the $5 US cutoff, we're doing our very best. No, sorry. I'm obligating myself to read it on air. If it's under that, we'll do our very best to make time. Normally, I always make time, but I do have a heart out today. And if you are watching us on the censorship platform of YouTube, we are recently remonetized over there. So if you want to leave us a super chat, the same rules apply, but there's also a third way. So share the chat. That's great. Helps us get around the censorship. Leave us a chat or leave us a paid comment after the fact. That's called a super thanks. And as you know, we'll never take a penny from Mark Carney to hold him accountable. How could we? It would just contaminate everything that we said or did. So we rely on the support of you at home. Without you, there's no Rebel News. So David Menzies, let's get into the news of the day. Was yesterday Nakba Day? Was it?
Sorry, was yesterday
Nakba Day? The catastrophe, as the Palestinians say. I think that's why they were all up and at him yesterday, protesting in the streets.
Oh, that's not to be confused with the Day of Rage. I know that was in April.
Right. No, I think every day is a day of rage for these folks, and they just make it official a couple times a year. Nakba Day, relating to the founding of the State of Israel. The other side calls it a catastrophe.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they were out and about protesting on a weeknight, when normally they're, I guess, at home playing video games.
As if they need another reason. But Sheila, I woke up this morning to see a X posting by our friend Leviathan. He always puts fantastic stuff on X. And it's entitled A Tale of Two-Tier Policing. And it's specifically, what do you know? Badge number 7724, aka Toronto Police Service Officer Chang. Chang was laying down the law not against the Hamashols who were actually assaulting people with smoke, including a pregnant woman. And he's kind of like, when it's them, it's a he's like a professional wrestling referee, folks. You know, when they're dealing with the bad guy, hey, Crusher, I've warned you 9 times not to use that foreign object. If you do it again, I'm going to warn you a 10th time. Anyways, let's just play a little of this video and see Mr. Chang in action, and then we're going to contrast it with what happened when Efren and I were last year covering the 6-month anniversary of the October 7th massacre. And you want to see a dichotomy in policing? Buckle up, folks. Let's check out Chang's recent so-called version of law enforcement versus what he did to me last April.
You've you gotta say this to make it official. Continue to do this. You shall be arrested for mischief. For property and enjoyment of property. Doing that, you know what you're doing. There you go. You've been warned. There you go. 7750. I got it. Don't worry. Yeah. Shut up.
Yeah, so Sheila, there's Chang. The person is creating mischief. He's making it unbearable for those patio users to enjoy their dinners. And he says, you have been warned. You are creating mischief, but doesn't arrest them for mischief. Now, before you weigh in, Sheila, let's see Chang last April in 2024, how he reacted to us in the public square practicing journalism. Check it out.
They can chant genocide in the street, and I can't cover that. Obey your oath, officer. Obey your oath. Listen, if I'm on the other arrest, get your hands off. Okay, then I'll put your phone down. Put your hands behind your back. Put your hands behind your back.
You're under arrest for refusing to leave, okay? Refusing to leave the wagon, Mr. Man. Goodbye.
Efren, are you catching this?
Yeah.
Once again, you have people 10 genocide in the streets of our democracy.
You're under arrest for refusing to leave premises, okay, Mr. Man?
It's a public place. This is literally the public square. This is
I've
literally.
asked you numerous times. I try to be as nice as possible. Right? You don't have past authority, okay?
You can have.
You know.
They assaulted me and you did nothing. They assaulted me and you did nothing.
So, Sheila, very quickly, before you weigh in, the backstory, and I welcome our viewers to go to the original video. That was the 6-month anniversary vigil of the massacre from October 7th, 2023. There were more than 2,000 people at Nathan Phillips Square, quite literally the town square. The vigil was being led by Pierre Poilievre. And of course, the Hamasos, they never miss an opportunity to be reprobates. A small gaggle of them showed up to chant genocide. Can you imagine that, folks? During a 6-month anniversary of the single worst massacre of Jews post-Holocaust. They assaulted Efren and I. One of the guys shoved a 2x4 into my Adam's apple. I saw the police approaching. I said, oh, good. They saw that these jerks have crossed the line. Oh, careful what you wish for, folks, because Hamas is basically running the Toronto Police Service. Chief Demkiw is all in. And I was arrested, and what was the charge? Trespassing. You heard that.
In a public place.
On the public square where you're supposed to be demonstrating, where you're supposed to be protesting. The one person out of almost 3,000 people there that day, me, gets arrested for trespassing. Sheila, this is egregious and outrageous.
Completely.
And I think this police chief, Demkiw, he has to resign in shame, quite frankly.
Yeah, but he won't.
No.
Look at the mayhem in Toronto. Yeah, yesterday was Nakba Day, which is what the United Nations claims is a day of commemoration for Palestinians. It's observed on May 15th every single year. It was the 75th year. The reason it's a catastrophe is because the UN claims that 5.3 million Palestinian refugees are displaced 75 years later, 3.5 generations later. You're not a refugee at this point. You're just living. Like you're a resident. But the police, obviously, they know who the bad guys are, and it's the journalists who report on this stuff. Demkiw should have been fired, resigned a long time ago. If you had a decent mayor, she would be calling on the police chief to resign. This is outrageous that this continues to go on. If you had a decent premier, he'd be calling for the resignation of the police chief in Toronto for losing control of the streets every single week and again yesterday. I mean, if you know these people are in the streets marching every weekend, you must have known that they would be like this on the 15th. But this is Demkiw's Toronto.
Yeah, and Sheila, what they chant, because we've covered many of these demonstrations, they actually openly chant for genocide, which is against the criminal code. They display swastikas. They have people showing up cosplaying as Sinwar, the mastermind of the October 7th massacre. And the rank and file officers, nothing to see here. I think they're being directed from above. And the hate crimes unit, well, there's some nuance, in the criminal code. They might be chanting for genocide and personal harm, but there's a little bit of nuance. But if you're a peaceful counter-demonstrator or a member of the independent media, you are the problem because you're further inciting these haters, and we will throw the book at you. This is a disgrace.
Yeah, and pardon me if I don't believe that this is about just Israel, because these guys go and they protest in front of Jewish-owned businesses that have nothing to do with Israel. It's just regular old, centuries old Jew hate, and Toronto police stand by while there are chances to genocide. And they arrest the journalists. We've got another clip here. This one is from Delia Kurtz. I can't believe how this makes Toronto look on the international stage, but a bus of tourists who already, I don't know why you'd go to Toronto on a tour, but people are. And so, yeah, and it's coming to Canada is an expensive proposition. We are an expensive place. Flights here are expensive. We're a vast place to travel around. Tourists show up to exit this bus, and they get met by this Hamas hate fest. I'm embarrassed for Torontonians that this happened.
Stop killing our people! Stop killing our people! Stop killing our children! Stop bombing our land! Step by go back home! Palestine is our no home! Step by go back home! Palestine is not your home! From Israel and to Palestine!
Horrible. This is horrible. I'm so embarrassed for Toronto.
Well, Sheila, look on the bright side. They're walking towards Nathan Phillips Square. At least the cops didn't arrest the tourists for trespassing.
Right. Right. I guess there's an upside. Doug Ford is, let's just move ahead. I'm sorry, because I have to stay on time.
Okay.
Doug Ford says that during these tough economic times like these, the government needs to pour money into the infrastructure. Guess what? Exactly like the pandemic.
Yep.
What was the deficit or debt that he plans to run this time out? It's something atrocious.
It's a
I'm gonna
record.
look it up right now.
It makes the Bob Rae NDP government of 1990 to 95, Sheila, it makes them look like fiscal conservatives. I kid you not.
Yeah. Ontario tables, massive deficit in their 2025 budget. I guess the upside is they're actually tabling a budget and the feds aren't. The feds are just spending by fiat. $14.6 billion deficit planned for the next fiscal year, largely to deal with the economic pain of a trade war with the United States. Good grief. Let's hear how Doug Ford justifies blowing through all this money. I mean, he's running an NDP government at this point.
The budget had a lot of relief in it for the future impacts of tariffs, but how about direct relief for taxpayers and the cost of living going up? We're looking at rebate checks too with that, and if you can comment also on that $5 billion fund.
Yeah, so the $5 billion is to protect people, protect communities, protect businesses. We're going to focus on the businesses that have been hit by the tariffs right off the hop. They're going to be getting $1 billion to make sure they keep keep on their feet and keep creating jobs. But I ran on protecting Ontario, and I'm going to protect every single person, every business, every community, no matter what. And I always say with a budget, you look at it two ways, and Peter Betham-Falvey and Caroline Mulroney, they're spectacular. I'm so blessed to have them, and I know my colleagues agree. You do two things in a budget. Either slash and burn, that I've never done, I never will. I don't believe in slashing and burning. When we have tough economic times, you pour money into the infrastructure, into projects like this, keep people working. We'll get through it, just exactly like the pandemic. You spend a little bit when you're finding it's really tough, and you make it up a year or 2 years down the road. But we have a good path to balance. As Peter Betham-Falvey mentioned, my great Minister of Finance, we're in the best financial shape we've ever been in 15 years.
Best
Sheila,
financial shape they've ever been in 15 years, he would have you believe.
yeah, and by the way, his late great brother, the beloved Rob Ford, former mayor of Toronto, he did slash and burn. He used to always say, we have a spending issue. We have to cut from within. And that meant trimming the over-bloated bureaucracy, which Doug Ford will never do. What a disappointment. By the way, I don't mean to go off on a tangerine here, Sheila, but when did the Ontario logo when were the colors switched to black, white, and red, and there's a new stylized Trillium? I mean, when the McGuinty Wynne Liberals were in power, the logo, it basically, the Trillium resembled, I'm not making this up, folks, three men in a hot tub. And then when when Ford PCs got back in 2018, they brought back the Trillium logo classic. But what is with the red, black, and white color scheme in that new Trillium logo? I guess the point I'm making here, Sheila, is it looks like there's always money afoot to spend on really things that shouldn't be bought in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, these places that just keep designing their logo while the ship sinks, right? Like, it's just, I can't even believe he uttered those final words, that Ontario's in the best financial shape that it's been in a long time.
No,
of course it's not. And there's only one way to fix this, and this is to raise taxes, unfortunately, or cuts. I guess the second way is cut spending, but it doesn't look like that's on Doug Ford's agenda. And by the way, where are all those jobs that those EV plants were supposed to
my
provide?
goodness. Do you think Doug has buyer's remorse on that one? Honda announced they're delaying their EV vehicle plant by 2 years. I think that's dead on arrival, Sheila.
And for sure, because they're moving the CRV back to Ohio, I think it is, right?
Yep.
So that plant was supposed to build the EV CRV, which is, I think, their flagship sort of EV. I know the CRV is their flagship SUV, and they're moving that production out of the country. And those CRVs were meant for the American market. So these are Trump's tariffs at work, right? It was meant to repatriate manufacturing meant for Americans. It's happening. But this is the kind of stuff that Doug Ford was counting on. This is why he cozied up to Trudeau and now Carney.
Yep.
And he's getting the shaft. But at the end of the day, it's really Ontarians who are getting screwed.
Oh, 100%. And I came across more information the other day, Sheila, the Cami plant owned by GM in southwestern Ontario. Evidently, there are hundreds and hundreds of EV commercial vehicles that are just gathering cobwebs. They were all destined to the U.S. market, U.S. government contracts, which Trump has canceled. And apparently there is no domestic market for these vehicles. And again, a plant in their EV initiative heavily subsidized by both the federal government and the Ontario government. Of course, Lincoln Jay and I, you might remember, we were invited to cover it, and once Blackface saw who we were frog marched off the premises at gunpoint, even though we had an invite from General Motors to cover it. Unbelievable.
Yeah, this is the thing, though. There's absolutely no plan to deal with any of that. Like, zero plan. I saw Melanie Joly, who I believe is the industry minister now, just basically say, we're going to give these people money. I'm like, that's not a solution. That is how we got here. You can't, like, that's one of Trump's arguments against what we do here, is that we unreasonably subsidize our auto sector. And he's mad about that. And so what is her solution to this? You know what? In these trying tariff times, we're just going to give them more money. What could possibly go wrong?
And Sheila, so much for the argument, well, okay, maybe you're against government subsidization of well-paying jobs, but at least Canadians are getting jobs. Well, not if you go to the Stellantis plant, the EV plant under construction, where hundreds and hundreds of the jobs are South Korean workers. How in blue hell did we get into a deal like that? We, with our Canadian tax dollars, are going to subsidize what I think is going to be a white elephant. You joke, Sheila, by saying these EV battery plants are going to be casinos in the near future. But if the silver lining is that, Joe and Jane Windsor get to have a nice paying job and can support their family, well, that argument evaporates when foreign nationals who come in And Canadians can do those jobs. We've reached out to
Sure.
people. There's a lot of acrimony at that plant, resulting in near
I believe
fistfights
it.
between
Yep.
the two camps. But Sheila, can you explain who signed off on that deal? That our domestic tax dollars subsidize foreign jobs in Canada?
What are you talking about? We're doing that at the fast food place too. Like,
Well, yeah, in a way.
right? Like, this is just how the Canadian economy works. Canadians get pushed out of their jobs. The Canadian youth don't get their starter job
That's right.
because, according to the Liberals, it is okay to have a slave underclass, which is driving down the cost of wages for everybody else through their temporary foreign workers program. All jobs that could be done by Canadians. And with unemployment 10% in the Toronto area, it seems like maybe we should do something about it. I'm just not sure the Liberals will.
And also in terms of debts and deficits, Sheila, how about tearing down these wind turbines, which they're very spotty in terms of a reliable source of electricity. They cause all kinds of problems, I understand, for both people and wildlife. And instead redirect our efforts at building dams to exploit untapped hydroelectric power in this province that doesn't have those nasty side effects. But no, I guess Ford is doubling down on McGuinty Wynne going the green energy route, which kills jobs and makes Ontario's power, well, basically unaffordable when you look at every other jurisdiction in North America.
Right. And all of it needs either hydro or fossil fuel backup anyway. So it's just an exercise in virtue signaling redundancy, which costs the consumer more and more and more all the time. Let's move ahead, but still on Premier Ford. He says cities are using photo radar as a revenue tool. Of course they are.
Yep.
Since when is he a fiscal conservative? Suggesting that more signs be placed around these areas to warn drivers. Deco Labels making those signs, Doug, maybe? And then, this is my favorite part. A bug flies in the Premier's mouth.
Not again!
No, it flew around him, but remember that time he accidentally ate a bee during a press conference? Oh, let's watch.
The budget calls for more of the notifications for drivers for speed enforcement and red light cameras. Why? What more do they need to be aware of a speed trap?
Well, some, not everyone, but the city's using it as their revenue source, and it's a little unfair. They hide them all over the place, and if you're going 10 kilometers an hour over, you're getting dinged. So it's a real revenue opposed to safety. I always want to make sure I differentiate between school zones. Everyone should be crawling through a school zone, but they're putting them all over the place, and they're creating endless amounts of money, and people aren't too happy when they get dinged for 10 kilometers over or 5 kilometers over. It's a revenue tool. So all we're saying is not to take them away. I don't like them, but let's put signs up. The whole purpose of a radar trap is to slow people down. So let's slow people down by putting big signs that there's a radar ahead, and we'll go from there. That bee's going to go in my mouth any second here.
Yes.
All right.
Oh no, not again.
Almost. No. I dinged myself bad shaving this morning, man. That thing wouldn't stop bleeding on the side.
What does that have to do with anything, the shaving incident?
Yeah, I don't think it's the blood. I think it might be a particle of cherry cheesecake on his lips or something that attracts the insect community. But Sheila, he is right. These are unfair revenue generating tools, not far from Rebel headquarters on Lawrence Avenue near Marley and near the Allen Road, rather, which is one of the most congested intersections in Toronto. Always makes the top 10 list. Somehow, I had a few hundred meters of free space, and I guess I exceeded 50 kilometers an hour, and I got this nice big $83 ticket in the mail. And that is the curse of driving in Toronto. When you are typically out on the road, unless it's the wee hours of the morning, you're stuck in gridlock. And then when you can finally put the pedal to the metal, you're going to pay for it. But the point is, Sheila, if Doug Ford is against this, and he should be against it because this is cities maliciously using radar cameras as a revenue generating tool as opposed to anything that has to do with safety. The municipalities are creatures of the Ontario government. He can order them tomorrow. Take those cameras down. The province is going ahead later this summer, taking out those despicable bike lanes on Yonge, Bloor, and Queen's Park Crescent and University. So if they can do that with the bike lanes, they can do that with the speed cameras. Why isn't he doing that if he's against it, Sheila?
Well, that's the thing. In Alberta, we took out the photo radar on provincial highways. So
remember that,
you can't
yeah.
use it on provincial highways because it really is, that's all it is a revenue tool. So yeah, Doug Ford is right, but I also think that maybe he should have his blood sugars checked. I'm worried that all these bugs flying around him like he is a flower full of nectar. I'm worried that he has diabetic ketoacidosis. It makes you smell sweet. And it's because you're taking in too much sugar and your pancreas can't keep up. I mean, it's just, look at it. That's a bee going in to collect nectar. It doesn't know that that sickly sweet smell is his pancreas giving out.
Oh my goodness. And and speaking of Alberta, Sheila, when I was working there, 85, 86, I remember in 85, and I just loved the gung-ho Alberta spirit and how it's so much like a U.S. state. The Attorney General, if memory serves, got a speeding ticket and was found to have an illegal radar detector in his car. So what did he do? He told law enforcement to suspend giving tickets to everybody who had an illegal radar detector. And then as they introduced legislation to make radar detectors legal. So the first thing I did was go to the local stereo shop and get a radar detector,
You know what? That's the Alberta way. Find a problem, fix a problem. And he did. We got one more thing on the topic of Ontario, I guess. We have another seat going to the Liberals in Milton East, Halton Hills South. Upon recount, the vote margin narrowed from 29 votes to 21 with her recount. And Elections Canada ordered a recount last week after the vote validation process showed that she had won the riding over Parm Gill by a very, very slim margin. So that brings the Liberals within 2 seats of a majority. Let's hope no NDP cross the floor, although what is tangibly the difference? Or that all the Conservatives stay happy and healthy and out of harm's way.
And Sheila, keep your eye on a Windsor riding, which they're champing at the bit to challenge. They're just outside the margin of error that allows a challenge, but nevertheless, we want you to bend the rules, Elections Canada. So if that goes their way, it's 1 seat. But I think, we've discussed this before, Sheila, you don't need a supply agreement with the NDP. You don't need an NDPer to cross the floor. The NDP doesn't have official party status. They're broke. They don't have a leader, really. Well, they got to get a new leader, I should say. So if they have to wait 4 years for an election, they need that time desperately to rebuild. So you can watch them act as cronies and minions for the Mark Carney Liberals without any strings attached.
Right, of course. And I think they're going to recount their way to a majority government. We're going to be stuck with these guys for 4 straight years. Although the Bloc is challenging that 1 vote victory.
Yes.
Considering that a Bloc voter came forward and said, my vote was turned away. Or she didn't, or her vote wasn't counted, or she was unable to submit her ballot. So I think that's going to go to court.
It has to go to court, Sheila. And there was a despicable question asked by, I can't remember the name of the journalist, to Mr. Blanchette. And it was, it was words to the effect of, are you not willing to accept the results of the election? It was very an American bias kind of question, a January 6th kind of thing.
Sure.
No, Blanchette is on the right side of history here.
Right.
If by all respects, this is a tie, a dead heat, a ballot was returned to sender, which would have made it a tie. And this idea of, let's not worry about this. Let's just go forward, give it to the Liberal candidate. No, there has to be, and you know what, Sheila? All options, I understand, are on the table, from flipping a coin to having a by-election. But you can't, especially with this one ballot that was returned that would have made the difference in terms of being a dead heat. Yes, he has every right to air his grievances about this recount.
Of course he does. If your vote truly counts, then your vote should be able to change the results of an election.
Yeah.
Right? And if they don't count her vote, she's disenfranchised, which is, I think, a huge charter violation. So either your vote counts or it doesn't. I guess that's what the courts need to decide. Which means if they don't do something about this, then why even have elections? Why even give all of us a chance to vote? Just pick some people then.
No, 100%. And by the way, Sheila, is this not a cautionary tale out there that when people say every vote counts, it really does? Just think, in that riding, if 2 more people just showed up, the Bloc has that, right? And maybe there were 2 people that night, and they got busy. Kid has soccer practice. I gotta, drive my daughter to dancing. But you know what? I think the candidate has it in the bag. When you think along those lines, it gets out of the bag really fast. Always, always vote. And Sheila, I gotta tell you, I never leave anything to chance. I can't remember in my adult life ever voting on election day. I think, by 2 weeks before election day, when the advanced polls are available, you're pretty well certain, I should think, who you're going to vote for. Go to the advanced polls. You're in and out, lickety-split. There's no excuse.
Yep. Yeah, it's quick. It's quick. There's no excuse not to vote, really. All right, let's hit an ad break and we'll come back and we'll talk about the things that are happening in Alberta, which are making the NDP just say crazy things in Alberta, like just crazy, crazy things. And it's, anyways, we'll talk about it on the other side.
What if governments are trying to reinvent the wheel when the greatest teacher of all times has already laid out the perfect blueprint for a constitution for a kingdom of love, faith, and freedom? Introducing the Kingdom of Heaven Freedom Passport. This special edition Freedom Passport captures the foundational truths of love, ethics, and freedom for all. It's a powerful reminder of Jesus' call to love one another and to be part of something bigger that you can carry with you every day. Join the movement, share the truth, and spread the love with your family and friends. Get your Kingdom of Heaven Freedom Passport at freedompassport.ca. And right now, all orders in North America come with free shipping and a free downloadable song with every purchase.
They told us to sit down, they keep telling us to shut up, and they tell us Western separation is off the table. But we're done getting told what to do. Now on Monday, June 2nd, join us in Regina at the Turnvey Center Banquet Hall for a town hall that finally puts your voices first. Doors open at 5, the town hall starts at 6, and for just $5 you can reserve your seat at donegetingscrewed.com. We're talking about pipelines, emissions cap, Ottawa's ongoing overreach, and yes, what a real Western future might look like, with or without the rest of Canada. This isn't about rage, it's about respect. And it starts with you showing up. Regina, you're next. Be there June 2nd. Go to donegetingscrewed.com for tickets and details.
Well, Sheila, I hope you have a great time in Saskatchewan with the big boss man. Alas and alack, I cannot be there. As you know, I am contractually obliged to avoid all things Regina. Anyway,
Regina itself got in trouble for their own marketing campaign. It was
yeah, I
the city
know.
that rhymes with fun, and everybody got mad at, well, not everybody, but the usual suspects got mad at them.
That was my only sin, Sheila. I was ahead of the curve yet again.
Exactly. So June 2nd, emergency Regina Town Hall. If you are on the fence about hemming and hawing about whether or not you should get a ticket, you must, because this will sell out. The ones in Alberta and Saskatchewan sold out right away. And then we had a lot of people saying, Sheila, you got to let me in. And I'm saying, no, I cannot break the fire code. So if you are thinking about it, please go to donegettingscrewed.com and get your tickets today. And boy, that's going to be an evergreen URL for us here at Rebel News. when we're done using it for this, I mean, as long as Mark Carney's in power, we're going to be using that one over and over and over again.
And by the way,
All right.
folks, Sheila isn't joking when she says we can't break the fire code, much like Pierre Poilievre had to turn away sometimes hundreds of people at his rallies. It's not that we or him are being meanies.
I want
it's
you
just
there.
that if we do break the fire code or the Conservatives break the fire code, guess what leads in the mainstream media
Right.
coverage, even if there's no disaster? But there could have been
Exactly.
one, and wasn't this irresponsible of those people? Unbelievable.
Yes. Yes, of course. We'll just be the big meanies who didn't care about anybody's safety. I know. So I want to talk about this thing that's quietly
Yes.
happening in Alberta. The law was it was floated back in April by Mike Ellis. He's our public safety minister, who's actually a former cop. It's good to have somebody who knows what he's doing in charge of public safety in the province. And it's called Bill 49. It is in third reading in the Alberta legislature, and it's an incredible law. It makes changes to other pieces of legislation, but what it does is, well, let's start with the smaller thing that it does, but it's also important. It deals with copper thieves. If you're tired of drug-addled copper thieves on your construction site, well, the Alberta government's dealing with it. But it also limits the emergency powers that the province can use, which is the opposite bizarro thing from what the feds are doing. So as you know, the feds illegally invoked the Emergencies Act. So their response to that was not to say sorry and we'll never do that again. It is to amend the legislation so that they can use it on you easier next time. In Alberta, coming out of the pandemic and the current UCP government being a response to the former UCP government abusing the emergency powers, they're limiting the size and scope. And they're adding a clause that says the police cannot do things to you during an emergency which would violate your rights. So it's that an emergency will never override your charter rights as long as you're in Alberta. But then the last thing that's making the left all crazy is that it lays the groundwork for the creation of an Alberta police force. And the left is, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
I don't want the feds police force in charge of us because they'll be forced, maybe, I don't know. Daniel Smith said at the time, the RCMP on contract in Alberta will never be asked to confiscate our guns. But this is an extra piece of insulation from a bad government. And the NDP in Alberta are losing their marbles. They're saying that this is a separatist move. And it's like, it wasn't a separatist move when Ontario did it. Could have been a separatist move when Quebec did it. But why can't it be a pro-Alberta thing? Why can't we have what the other places have without it spelling the end of Confederation? I don't know.
No, isn't it amazing how the left, Sheila, who once upon a time was all about civil liberties and freedom and, protecting the Constitution, and the list goes on, and now they're all about bigger, more abrasive government. Whatever happened to classical liberalism, I guess is what I'm asking.
We've got this one weird, and again, every vote counts. If you didn't vote Conservative in Calgary Elbow, you are responsible for this man. His name is Samir Kayandi. He's the MLA there. And look what he has to say. It's so like he was made in a lab. to be an annoying NDP politician, because he starts off acknowledging his privilege, and then goes on to say, like, if you want the government to deal with copper thieves, and if you want the government to respect your rights during a pandemic, that you're, his words, a wingnut. Watch this.
I mean, Calgary Elbow is, of course, one of the most privileged urban privilege seats in Alberta. But that privilege does not, so it exists. I won't deny it. But that doesn't prevent those of us who live in Calgary, those of my constituents who live in Calgary Elbow, from feeling compassion and empathy for what's going on with what appears to be an extremely challenging rural crime problem. And yet, at the same time, that rural crime problem is being used to implement a strategy that, as the member for Edmonton Manning has mentioned, has existed amongst the pro-sovereignty, firewall, free Alberta wingnuts that have been a part of this province ever since social credit was in power. They're going back to their playbook and saying what pieces of the free Alberta strategy make sense based on the crisis that we have today.
I think that's it. That's enough.
Sheila, why is it that clip is reminding me that today is National Honor Our LGBT Elders Day? Yeah, I don't know.
He says he talks it was like 11 minutes. I had to cut it down. I suffered through it. He talks about like how his urban riding really empathizes with us rural people about what appears to be a spate of crime plaguing rural Alberta. And that should be good enough for us, basically, is that, look, the RCMP response times suck because there's too much rural crime, but can you just settle on us urban dwellers being empathetic with you and please shut up? Like, it's the dumbest thing, that if you want a safer community, that you're some sort of separatist wingnut. I think wanting a safer community should go across all political parties, but as is usually the case, the NDP continues to sympathize with the devil.
Isn't it amazing, Sheila? He is a little sliver of a domestic version of today's modern day Democrats in the U.S.
Yes.
As Trump is deporting gangbangers and criminals and pedophiles, the Democrats somehow think that they're being denied due process, even though they were never American citizens to begin with. So your due process was never a thing because you were never a citizen. And then even flying down to meet with Maryland man, who's also a wife beater, by the way. And they are thinking they are getting the American public on side by going to bat for the worst of the worst. That's what this guy is doing too, Sheila, here in Calgary.
Oh, for sure. But it is a reflection of what's happening at the national level. We've got this story from our friends at Juno from Justice Minister Sean Fraser. He thinks it's weird. He says Justice Minister Sean Fraser shrugs off bail reform as weird. It's weird to want to repeal justice bills that make it easier for criminals to reoffend. Tamara and I sort of dug down on the numbers yesterday while we were live. And I think it's 1/3 of murderers in this country, like people who are charged with murder, are out on bail for other violent offenses.
Unbelievable.
That's a problem. That's a huge problem. And he thinks it's weird for us to even be worried about this sort of stuff.
How is that? Sheila, I'm going to say something that many would feel to be controversial, but I have to say it. I think the lack of empathy by the likes of Fraser and company has to do with the fact they have no personal skin in the game. They have armed security. They live in likely gated communities. They have personal protection units. I wonder if Mr. Fraser would change his tune if a family member, God forbid, was murdered by some bad guy. And remember, Sean Fraser, prior to the election being called, he was stepping down to spend more time with his family. I guess his family didn't want him to spend more time with him because as soon as Carney came back, this cat came back. But that's how I feel, Sheila, that so many in elected office haven't experienced the horrific personal tragedy of, say, having a child killed by someone like that. So I think there's a lack of empathy and understanding regarding this issue.
Right, but these people think that if they're empathetic and understanding, that should be enough. That should just solve the problem, right? Like that's what we heard from the NDP MLA in Calgary Elbow of all places.
Before you go on, by the one last point, Sheila, Calgary Elbow, do you think they're going to change the name of that riding to Calgary Elbows Up?
I doubt it. In the new country, we won't be able to say elbows up. I just want to talk about this one thing because, and I'll just breeze through it, Olivia, if we can. I just really love I love the story for spite. I'll be honest with you. It might make me a bad person, but this is another one of those Trudeau MPs who was quitting to spend time with family. And then all of a sudden he was like, no, actually, I don't like my family. I'm running again. But along the way, the typical liberal sense of entitlement crept in, and then he got mugged by reality and the disloyalty of Mark Carney. So I love this story. We'll breeze through it because, like I said, I got a heart out. We got two more things to talk about. So it's from Blacklock's. Liberal MP Nate Erskine-Smith dumped his stock portfolio days before being booted from cabinet, thinking he was a shoo-in. It's so humiliating. So a May 1st ethics filing reveals Erskine-Smith sold off all of his publicly traded shares to comply with conflict of interest rules, only to be fired from cabinet less than 2 weeks later. Ministers have 120 days to sell off stocks or set up a blind trust. Nate hit day 144, so he's already over. He didn't disclose which stocks he sold. He just noted divestment of publicly traded securities by sale, and then he claimed that he was fully in compliance. And Nate Erskine-Smith the other day had a very public meltdown because he was not included in cabinet. And he didn't mention why he had this public meltdown. He just said he felt disrespected, but it's probably because it cost him his stock portfolio. And then he said, you put in so much time and then it's not there anymore. Somehow he forgot that this is politics and you're not entitled to your job. So as I said in my quick recap, he said he was quitting politics, changed his mind when Trudeau made him housing minister, reappointed in March 2025, then fired 2 months later after dumping his stocks. He actually, I think, thought he could probably, after he had that profanity-laced meltdown against Rick Perkins, saying like this is that Rick Perkins could F right off, and he still was able to stay as a minister. I think he honestly thought he could get away with anything. But anyway, it couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
Sheila, I understand his anger because back in January, we went out to cover a Carney press conference at a pub in the beach area of Toronto. It was kind of unique because not only were mainstream media, or rather independent media, media non grata, the legacy media was also forced to cover it from a sidewalk and listen in through an open window. I'm not making this up, but Carney was a excitement vampire. You could feel the energy leave the room. And Nate Erskine-Smith, Sheila, was basically cutting wrestling promos. He was a total well-meaning foot soldier, minion. At one point, he even crossed the street and crashed a little presser that Melissa Lantsman was doing.
Right.
And so I think with all of this, foot soldier work he was doing to prop up Carney, I kind of get why he thought he had a reward coming, and when it didn't come, oh boy.
Yeah, well, also I think though his foot soldier work was unhinged, and I think
it was.
I think the Carney, who is exceptionally boring, looked at this unhinged guy and thought he's just going to be a liability. Speaking of liability, Mark Carney already has a bunch of people saying things in some provinces to some people in some languages and others completely differently, including himself on the issue of pipelines. So Mark Carney says yes to pipelines, although he says he supports Bill C-69, which is no to pipelines. But his cabinet ministers, including Stephen Guilbeault, who that's not his lane anymore. He's over at censorship, heritage. He's not the environment minister anymore. But the environment minister also says no. But Mark Carney also says yes to pipelines, but Quebec's got a veto. So anyways, let's watch this latest video that's giving the Canadian public whiplash on whether or not the Liberals support pipelines.
Dans mes conversations avec les premiers ministres, et M. Carney, dans la campagne électorale, a été très clair, un corridor énergétique, ça peut amener des lignes de transmission d'électricité, ça peut amener le gaz naturel, ça peut amener à la limite des wagons de minéraux critiques. C'est pas uniquement des pipelines. Les gens ont tendance à réduire ça à une pipeline de pétrole.
Ouais.
On ne parle pas de pipeline de pétrole quand on parle de corridor énergétique.
Okay. All right. I guess they really do want us to leave. Right? Like, they just want us to exit this country. Carney said he's open. He didn't say yes to pipelines, by the way. He said he's open to them, whatever that means. But they just said this energy corridor doesn't include energy from Alberta, basically. They said he's okay with rail cars. What if we put oil in the rail car? Can we do that? I don't know.
Yeah, and you forgot to add one notable voice out there, Stephen Guilbeault, the jailbird. Even though he's no longer environment minister, even though he never was energy minister, why in blue hell is he weighing in on the pipeline issue?
Because he's an idiot. Because he's an idiot and a radical. These people can't help themselves. Why is Dominic LeBlanc weighing in on it?
Yeah.
These people can't help themselves. They just are taking swipe after swipe after swipe at Alberta. They just are.
Yeah.
And then they call us swing nuts.
Yeah. And in the immortal words of The Rock, Sheila, know your role and shut your damn mouth. That's my advice to all these lackeys.
We've got 2 minutes left on the show, and I think a couple of chats or one or two chats to do.
Go for it.
But we have the Daily Cringe. I don't want to miss out on the Daily Cringe. People are sticking around to the end to watch the Daily Cringe. The Daily Cringe is something this topic, I talked about it the other day on my X account if you're not following me. But let's watch this. It's called a barista rebellion. Apparently, they're skilled labor now. They're a union. They have a union. I didn't know that. They're rebelling against the new dress code at Starbucks.
Hey!
Look at them. They all look like exactly why you need a dress code.
Hey! Ho! Dress code has got to go! Hey! Ho! Dress code has got to go! What do we want? A contract! Now! What do we want? A contract! When do we want it? Now! And if we don't get it, shut it down! If we don't get it, shut it down! If we hey! Ho!
Okay, do they know that they're not the only place that sells coffee, right? Like, you can pay $8 for a coffee anywhere, I guess, if you want to. But some of them look exactly like the kind of people you need to bring in a dress code to deal with. And the dress code basically is you need to look presentable at work, which is a bridge too far for some of these otherwise unemployables.
Oh, and Sheila, I think a major point about this story is that as far as dress codes go, what Starbucks is asking for is the bare minimum.
Minimal.
A black top, You can wear jeans or khaki pants.
Yeah.
That's it. But then again, Sheila, I thought there already was a dress code at Starbucks. Namely, you have to have pink or teal dyed hair. You have to be wearing a face mask. And you have to have a giant nose piercing through your nostrils. But what do I know?
I was shocked to discover that they were unionized, because this is not exactly skilled labor. Yeah, these people, look at them. They need personal appearance guardrails. They definitely do.
Starbucks, Sheila, is doing them a favor. That dress code is a step up from what they're normally wearing in the store.
For sure. A solid black t-shirt.
Yeah.
Or shirt. Khaki, black, or blue denim bottoms.
That's incredible. Like, how low of a benchmark of a dress code? I mean, it's certainly not, the requirement of what Hooters waitresses have to wear, right?
Hooters is going broke, much to my chagrin. It's the best place to eat if you're waiting at the Winnipeg airport. But look, workers of Starbucks, we'll figure out your neurodiverse and gender diverse on our own. You don't need to wear a t-shirt to tell us. We'll figure it out. We're smart.
Wow. We have to put up with this all for the privilege of spending $5 for bitter coffee.
5.
Unbelievable.
8. Yeah. I don't even recall the last time I've set foot in a Starbucks. All right. I think that's it. I think we have a chat, and then I got to go.
Right.
From Nana Awake. She's a regular supporter of the show. Regular chatter. She says, I'm curious, why would only one government printed envelope have the wrong return address? Where are the rest? Something up here and more than suspect on the one vote that is hanging in the balance for the Bloc Québécois.
Nana raises a great point, Sheila. And unless that person who had their ballot returned doesn't make a stink about it, we don't know, right?
Right.
So there could be more. It's just that people haven't bothered. Maybe they threw out the return to sender as junk mail. They forgot about it. So, that's even more problematic.
Sure it is. I got to wrap. We'll say our goodbyes. But if everybody wants to stay on the stream, so there's some breaking news out of Alberta that in the citizen-led initiative act, which would be a referendum on anything, but the momentum, of course, is towards separation. People have been fretting about how a referendum would honor treaty rights. So Daniel Smith, our premier, just made an amendment that says any referendum question or any separation consideration would have to respect treaty rights, which I think is only fair. I'm happy to have our Indigenous friends and neighbors come with us, and because I don't particularly think the Canadian government has been all that kind to them. So anyways, we'll show that clip from that press conference as we go, but I think we're done the chats. Let's wrap up. I got to be on my next call momentarily.
Fantastic. Well, Sheila, good luck for the rest of your day, and thank you to everybody that tuned in, and of course to Nana for making that generous donation. Hey, raise a toast to the Queen, or is it the King? Then again, Victoria. What's the difference these days?
Victoria.
Yeah. Okay. In any event, folks, enjoy this glorious long weekend.
We won't be on Monday. I'm not on Monday because of Victoria Day.
We're not. I think, is it you and Lise on Tuesday, Sheila?
Yes, we're back. Lise and I are back on Tuesday.
Okay, then. And in the meantime, as always, folks, stay safe and stay sane.
Amendments made last minute to Bill 54 in the name of honoring, respecting treaty rights, etc. So can you give us a tangible example of how that could be used in the future if there is a separation referendum? Because a lot of First Nations chiefs, or maybe all First Nations chiefs, would argue that the only way you can honor and respect treaty rights is just by dropping this separation conversation.
Well, I would say that no one is saying that to Quebec. Quebec has 23 Bloc MPs, and they have a Parti Québécois that is polling at the highest amount. And so it seems to me that's a question for scholars, legal scholars, to answer. It's a question that's been put to the Supreme Court. and the Supreme Court answered it. It's been addressed in the Clarity Act about self-determination, and so I think those are details that I would leave to the lawyers to sort out. As you know, at the moment, there are no petition campaigns. There's no referendums planned. I have always said I support a sovereign Alberta within a united Canada, and my job is to get a new deal with Canada, which is what